Hi, and welcome to another of my series of conversations and Q&A sessions and tutorials. My name is John Cornicello, and I'm going live on Monday and Thursdays at 10 Pacific Time, 1 Eastern. Today, my special guest is food photographer, author, and director Andrew Scrivani. Andrew and I met a few years ago on Creative Live and have kept up our friendship since. Let me tell you that Andrew is also a great photographic subject. I'll show some photos of him later in the broadcast. But for now, let me turn things over to Andrew to introduce himself and tell you about his new book, That Photo Makes Me Hungry, and then we'll open things up to your questions. Feel free to unmute yourself to speak your question, or you can post it in the chat window. Take it away, Andrew.
And welcome to my my home, my weekend, which has now become my quarantine home in New Jersey. I have been doing work from home cafe posts on my Instagram recently, which has been sort of a distraction plus a new way to share a little bit of what I do normally. Most people know me from the photography, but I also know how to cook, and I did my own food styling for quite a while. Some of that stuff you see in my book that John prefaced, That Photo Makes Me Hungry, which is about my experiences in food photography, and it's a part instructional manual, a little bit of a self-help book, and a little bit of a memoir. And that's directly from my publisher for that line. But I've known John since my first attempt at teaching on Creative Live. Oh, look, Kate has my book. There it is.
Cool, we got it. Thanks.
Awesome. But John and I met on Creative Live probably in 2013, I think, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And he helped me immensely in navigating that sort of subculture over at Creative Live, and we began a friendship there, and we've stayed friends. And he's usually my first call when I get into Seattle, so so we can go grab a meal and hang out. So I'm happy to be here to support him in this endeavor, and I am expecting that there'll be some pretty cool questions coming my way. So thanks for coming.
Sure. Does anyone want to start with anything right now?
You want to be starting something? Come on, start something.
How about John down in Texas?
Andrew, thank you for your time and being here. John, for putting this together. What's your best recommendation for approaching restaurateurs who may have never hired a photographer to photograph their food? They're used to doing it on their phone and think, hey, that's good enough.
Yeah, I think one of the things that it's really helpful for restaurateurs who are, especially in smaller places that don't have a culture of food photography, is to bring your work to them and explain to them that you're looking to build a portfolio, you think that their food is really going to be a great subject, and that you can bring something to the table that helps them in their business while it's helping you in yours. I think at the beginning, when you're trying to establish a portfolio, getting good food to shoot is hard, especially if you don't cook yourself or you don't work with a food stylist. So getting in a kitchen where the food is coming off the line and it's looking really good, or maybe the restaurant has a really nice atmosphere or a place that you can shoot outdoors, all of those things sort of play into your favor in order to build a resume and a rapport with chefs and restaurateurs, and also by building your portfolio of places that other clients may know about. Then that could lead to paid work, and it could actually build up an Instagram or another social media following that could expose your work to other people. So basically, it's a groundswell of information that you're building around your business that could start that way, where, you know, normally having to pay for food expenses, having to pay for studio space, all of those things come into play when you're trying to build a portfolio. So if you're able to trade or barter services for access with certain restaurants that you know their food will photograph well, I think that's an absolutely good trade-off at the beginning of your career.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sure. I'm going to take it over to sort of the technical side of things. Back in the early days with Creative Live, we were shooting with strobes, but I understand you've moved on to a lot of LED lighting. And what are your
Correct.
thoughts there?
Yeah, I think part of it was the initial impetus was because we were being asked to do both photo and video, and you couldn't do that without switching out all of your lighting in the middle of a shoot. And I got, I like the big singular light source. I mean, it's the daylight look is something that sort of is how I made my career. And I wasn't particularly fond of shooting strobe. I've gotten better at it as I got along in my career. Actually, knowing John really helped that because he was so helpful in the times we were working with strobe light at Creative Live that it actually got me a little bit more confident in using it. But at the end of the day, it didn't serve my needs the same way. So I moved on to LEDs. And over the course of the last 3 to 5 years, the LED lighting has gotten so much better because it actually puts out more power. So you don't have to dial your ISO so high to where you could start to lose quality. So now I'm shooting with movie lighting. I got involved in the movie industry about 3 years ago. And the production company I work with, we bought equipment for our last feature film that has nowhere to live when we're not shooting. So it lives at my studio. And I have—
That worked out well.
Yeah, and I have this terrific piece of equipment called an RE Sky Panel,
Wow.
which is an incredible piece of technology. It does amazing things for food because it really does mimic this big singular light source that I could dial into the color temperature of my studio and do mixed lighting. So like I'm getting ambient light at like 4850K, and then I dial my sky panel in to 4850K, and I have an opalescent filter on the front of it, like a lens, and then I have a big softbox. So this thing is double diffused at the right temperature, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's perfect. I shoot in the middle of the night sometimes.
Wow. How big is it?
The RE Sky Panel is an S60. So they have the S30, the S60, the S120, and the S360, and they just get exponentially bigger. One I have is about, I would say 2 feet, 2.5 feet wide by about a foot and a half
Nice.
rectangular, and it's on this big housing, a big yoke that you can tilt. So it's a pretty cool piece of technology. It's rather expensive. It's not something I think I would have bought for myself just for food photography, but the fact that I had access to it and I was able to use it, it actually, if I did buy it, now that I'm thinking about how I use it, it's paid for itself. So
that's great.
Yeah, so it was very interesting to play with that in a non sort of pressure way, on a movie set where I was able to watch gaffers and how they used them and how they modified them. And then I was able to implement like that confidence that I had knowing the light to move it into my studio and start to figure out how to use it there. It took a little while.
Brought up a good point there. A lot of times when people are asking how to learn about lighting, I tell them, go look at the cinematographers. They've got a lot more writing on them to get things done right, and they really know what they're doing. So there's some really good cinematography books about the lighting people, gaffs and grips and the like. You can really learn a lot there.
Yeah, the gaffs and grips that I worked with on Team Marco were half my age and 50 times my amount of knowledge about lighting. I mean, it was just incredible, like how, just technically skilled these young guys were. And in the role I played, they were a little weirded out by the executive producer of the film just hanging out with the grips and the grips and the gaff. I'm sitting on the back of the truck with these guys talking shop. And they were just like, who is this guy? Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you here? And all I felt like it was a great learning experience, both from getting involved with a movie industry crew, but also bringing some of that home to my studio. And a couple of those guys ended up becoming really good friends. And one of them is a very good cook. So he actually has come over to my studio, and I asked him just to come and hang out and catch up or whatever. And of course, the guy, a grip is a grip is a grip. The guy had to grab a filter and had to grab a bounce card, and he's standing around my table helping me out. So his name is Nate Thompson. He's a really good guy. So
Nice.
I have
See,
a follow-up question to here,
yeah.
John. Andrew, do you find a color temperature that you kind of gravitate to that's appealing when photographing food?
Yeah, I mean, the range that I shoot at is very narrow for the most part. I mean, depending on the conditions, obviously, but I mean, I feel like I'm always in that like 44 to 5,000 range where I settle in at the higher end of that. And it just feels like that just gives you just enough warmth where it still feels bright and accessible, where it doesn't feel bogged down. It doesn't get too tungsten, but it's still not enough warmth in there where it feels like I walked into a beautifully lit room and there was food on the table. And that, you know, I've been using that recently in when I teach people, you know, how to keep it simple when it comes to thinking about your lighting for food. And that's really, you know, I'm sitting in this room right now that has beautiful, you know, northeastern light, and I'm looking at a bowl of fruit 6 inches from my computer, and I'm looking at the way the light is playing on this fruit, and I'm saying, that's exactly what I want when I walk into the room, right? I want to see this like natural approach to how light hits food in a real setting.
All right.
And hopefully, you know, most of the time that's what I'm accomplishing. But, you know, if you think of it that way, you put yourself in that mindset, like, I don't want to overthink this. Is this just a bowl of fruit in a beautifully lit room? And if it works, then take out the camera and start shooting.
So over in the chat, Larry doesn't have a good audio connection, so he's posting a message there. Do you register your images, and does that help dissuade other commercial entities from using your work, or do you find yourself your work being taken?
I mean, my work gets pirated all the time. I mean, I think that watermarking your images kind of signals to the world that you're not really working in a professional capacity. I said that on a number of occasions. I think a watermark in a skilled retoucher's hands is basically, you know, a keystroke.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no point in that. I think ultimately, if you want to, there's really no protecting your images other than putting a downsized version of whatever you're posting online there. So like, you don't want to be posting high-res images because first of all, it's not necessary on the web. And secondly, that's where you're going to get your stuff pirated. So, you know, put a 72 DPI image up. It's only usable on the web. Nobody's going to be able to take it and use it in print. That's really your biggest concern, because that's really where your money is. And at the end of the day, you know, if people are using your pictures on Instagram or whatever, and they're giving you credit, you know, you take it. It's not going to be the end of the world. You know, the thing is like, even in stock photography, I sell stock photography, my work on Adobe. And I mean, it's not really even worth that much there. Like, even at the highest end of the premium collection, you know, you're making $500, maybe $500 to license an image. I mean, I'm not looking down my nose at $500, but I'm not also going to lose my mind over it if a picture gets stolen, you know, or a picture gets used inappropriately on a site that doesn't get a lot of views. If a major retailer stole one of my pictures, I'd get a lawyer. But other than that, it's not really worth the trouble. And you don't want to distract the viewer from your image with a watermark on it, because really then all I'm looking at is the watermark, and I'm not really paying attention to your photo anymore. Sorry, any of you watermark your images, by the way. I apologize for my disdain of your practice.
No, it's good to know that. I mean, I guess from a branding standpoint, do you feel like you're possibly leaving money on the table in that regard? It's like, wow, this image is great. Who did this? And I'm like, they don't know about you, Andrew. So
yeah, I mean, I get that, but I feel like, I don't know. I mean, if you're putting it on your social sites, there's really absolutely no reason to watermark it. If somebody else is using it and they're giving you credit, there's absolutely no reason to to watermark it. And if somebody's stealing it, trying to put it off as their own, they're probably going to take your watermark off anyway. So I feel like, you know, the bandwidth of a picture being out there with your name posted on the bottom of it, and that gets the attention of somebody who's eventually going to either hire you or use the image in a way that is generates money. I mean, it's a very, very shallow pool you're swimming in there.
Sometimes not sometimes, I have my camera set up to copyright a photo as I take the picture. So then that eliminates some of the need for copyright on the logo or whatever on the picture itself. What do you think of that?
I mean, if it's embedded in the metadata, that's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with that. And again, like pirating of imagery, I just don't know that there's, you know, the critical loss of the image financially. There's so much imagery in the world. There's so much that we even produce individually. I just don't know that there's that much value in going through the trouble of doing all that. Because here's the thing, even if somebody uses your picture illegally, you're going to send them a cease and desist letter. Now, you can send it personally, or you're going to need a lawyer to do that. If you do it with a lawyer, it's going to cost money. Then you have to give them a second notice, cease and desist. Then by the time you get to the point where you're ready to sue them, you need a lawyer. You have to file paperwork. You've already surpassed the value of the photo. So at the end of the day, like, that's sort of where my head has been at all these years, because I've learned this. Like, the New York Times used to chase down everybody who used to use one of my images illegally. And honestly, by the time we got to the point where second cease and desist letter has been sent out, most people pull the image. You know, most people don't want to get involved in a lawsuit with the New York Times. So, you know, that's the point, is that, you know, at the end of the day, unless you have some weight behind the threat of a lawyer, like, you know, unless they're using it to promote, you know, Gerber baby food, and you're all of a sudden, you know, looking at, a huge copyright infringement. I've never seen that happen in all my years of doing this. So that's sort of where I'm at. I mean, in terms of all of that.
Great. Can you hear me now? I think the microphone battery died before.
I can hear you.
I'm back on. Okay, good. I have a couple of new people that have joined in. Pam and Melissa, you feel free to unmute, and if you have any questions.
I see Lay here.
Lay's in there too.
Yeah, I just see her photo though. Anyway.
Something behind it.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, those comments about the copywriting, watermarking, all that. In the theater community, there's a lot of photo sharing that happens all the time. And I basically just remind people, please give me credit. I mean, those are just ways, well, the way I see it, those are ways for more people to see the image. The way it's getting used, no one's would have paid for it in any case. I'm not losing revenue. So I just try and use it as kind of an opportunity to build the network around who sees my work, you know, and sort of try and turn it as much as I can into a positive. I'm operating in a whole different realm here. It's not, you know, I'm not making my living off of this, but it's just a fact of everyday life. Images are showing up, mostly in my realm, you know, without bad intention. Just, you know, people like to share the images. So I try and make it into a positive.
Yeah. There's another question.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm coming from the perspective of editorial and advertising. You know, I'm not really coming at it from any other perspective, because at the end of the day, that's really where, if you're worried about your stuff being pirated, that's where you don't want it to be pirated, those venues. So, I mean, and then, you know, my experiences in those venues tell me that it's not worth the trouble or the distraction of doing it. If you're really, that's really where I'm coming from. Not to be like, you know, don't do it because it's, you know, whatever. I just don't think it's worth I don't think it's worth the effort.
I wasn't disagreeing. I was just adding on to it. Yeah.
No, but
Yeah,
I'm
gonna
also
go.
not trying to be disparaging of the practice. I just don't see it as I don't see it as purposeful.
Yeah, Larry had another technical question about focusing, so I'm going to broaden that. What cameras and lenses are you using these days? And being you're into macro stuff, are you doing stacking of images to get depth of field or anything like that?
You know, I haven't had. I've only done one campaign where I've had to do any focus stacking, but that was a couple of years back. And but I am still using the 50 prime 1.2 Canon, the 50 macro 2.5 compact macro from Canon, which they don't make anymore, and 100 millimeter L Canon 2.8, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my three or four primary lenses. Plus I have the Zeiss 50 macro 2.0. That's a really nice piece of glass, but it's manual focus. So I mainly use it for video now because I need to manual focus anyway for video. So with a focus ring on it, it actually becomes a really nice tool. But for what I'm doing in food photography, I don't use it as often because a lot of what I'm shooting is overhead on a camera stand, and having a manual focus lens 8 feet off the ground isn't really helpful.
Yeah. Do you tether? I mean, there's some people would tether with that so they can do the focus on the computer screen, possibly.
Well, with the manual focus lens, though, I still think that you have to get up and get.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to be up there to do that.
Yeah, but I do tether it. When I'm working with a client in-house, most of the time when there's nobody on set, I don't tether.
Yeah.
But when I do have people on set, obviously I will tether.
So what's your mix these days between still and video?
Not much video. I'm not shooting any video.
Okay.
I'm still being put up for directorial jobs in video, but I'm not actively seeking to do any videography. I have people that I work with that are much better at it than I am, and I would prefer to direct or produce in that realm. So I think I've been very, very focused on photography, especially lately. And then as the jobs come up, for different things, which obviously in the current situation is zero. There's a lot of conversations around what's going to happen next. I've provided my agent with what we're calling a capability list of the things that I can do in the current circumstances. So what people do I have access to? What equipment do I have access to? What spaces do I have access to? And now we're just waiting, like I've had a number of conversations with different agencies, clients, about doing different things. And, to date, the only thing I'm working on is the Times, because I can work on my own and nothing really.
That's the New York Times.
Yeah. And nothing really changes. Yeah. New York Times. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nothing's changed, like for the most part, I can work 100% in-house and get them what they need the same way. It's a little harder on me because I can't hire a food stylist, but I can do my own food styling. That's not the end of the world.
Speaking of styling and the like, want to talk about producing the book? I see we've got Kate here. You did the pie book with, and then you did your own book here.
Yeah. The book was an interesting thing for me. So doing Kate's book, Art of the Pie, sort of opened some doors with the publisher, Countryman, and our editor, Ann Treisman, who Kate and I share. So we've done now 4 books together between the 3 for Kate and my book. And we've built up a level of trust, and it's really a great workflow that you rarely see with publishers. Like we work with a small team. Our graphic guy, our layout guy is named Nick Caruso. He's laid out both of our books, and obviously we've both been very happy with the results. It took me about a year from the time I signed the contract to the time I delivered the manuscript and all of the photography. So it took me about a year to do that, but it took me actually longer than that to negotiate the contract. So I'm a bit of a pain in the neck. And I rewrote that contract quite a few times. But, you know, at the end of the day, I had to make a decision. Do I really want to write the book? And I did. So, you know, you end up accepting terms that, you know, you may or may not love, but I'm really happy with the final product. I'm really proud of it. It's been, you know, widely accepted throughout, you know, the circles that I travel in for teaching and for photography as something that's valuable, which I was hoping it became a valuable teaching tool for other instructors, or maybe for people for being self-taught, or as a companion to the kind of things that I do online. It was basically born of the outlines from the food photography classes I taught on Creative Live.
Nice.
So I took the outlines and remembered that I really teach anecdotally, right? I teach through telling stories about the things that we've done, or the photo shoots we've been on, or the people that I've known. And I feel like that was it's been an effective tool as an instructor. And Anne encouraged me to just turn those lessons into narrative on the page. And her instincts were right. And it was a very easy book to write from that perspective, in that I just remember what I teach. And then I go back and I obviously, through the editing process, I'm able to punch those things up a little bit more, because you get a little bit of time to think about what you want to say. But the structure of the book is all there on Creative Live. It's all in pieces and parts, but it's definitely all there, you know, in video as well.
Yeah. So are you working on a new project now, or a new book or anything?
I have a couple of projects I'm working on right now. With one of them with some Seattle folks. We're currently negotiating and talking about doing a book together with Barnaby Dorfman and Shari Weatherall from Foodista. So we're actually we're thinking about doing a collaboration, both writing and photography, about some of the things that they're really passionate about. Barnaby brought it up to me 2 months ago when I was in Seattle, and I love the idea. I brought it to the publisher. Anne loves the idea. So now it's sort of just getting kicked around in that process. And then the other thing is this work from home cafe thing that I'm working on right now. It just sort of came to me right at the beginning of the quarantine that I was going to be home and my wife was going to be home, and we weren't going anywhere. So I might as well do something productive about all this cooking I'm going to be doing at home. And now we're 30 recipes in. I got a regular spot on Creative Live, and I'm doing live feeds and guest spots. And hey, Kate, since you're here, I was actually thinking about asking you to do one with me too. So I'm going to be doing a guest spot today at 3 o'clock with the actress who played the female lead in Team Marco, who's an amazing Greek cook and my newest client as a photographer. So she's going to come on to my live feed and make homemade pita today at 3 o'clock. And it's sort of a test drive for having guests come in and do a live feed cooking demo with me, where I'm sort of hosting and handling the questions coming in from the live feed, and my guest is doing the cooking and responding. So we're going to try it out today, and we're going to see how it goes. And then I would love for Kate to come and do one and make a pie, and few of my other friends out there, I'm going to have them come in and do it, and Work from Home Cafe will take on another iteration in the next few weeks.
Great.
The more we're going to refine it. So
yeah. So Kate, what is it like to work with Andrew on these books, and do you have anything coming up?
Oh, well, working with Andrew is, it's amazing. He's, you know, as we know, I think he's the top of the field. And he's creative, he's challenging, he's a perfectionist, he wants it right, and he does what it takes to get it right. And I think in that process, his work ethic is incredible, and, you know, it matches mine. In what the finished product is it's amazing that those things that you hear about. The it's more than the sum of its parts is so true in my experience with working with him. You know, our first one was, I just happened to have, it's Art of the Pie. I mean, mine is all dog-eared and, you know, whatever. But one of the things that I wanted to mention about Andrew, when you were talking about your new book, which I also have here, is that it's fabulous if you are teaching to have your own text available. And, you know, that's one of the things that is great in this process of when you're writing a book. But I can't think of a photographer that I would rather work with. Our communication has always been great. And if there's an issue, we're both willing to talk about it. You know, it's like to make it right so that all aspects of creativity, business-wise, and just the emotional part of the projects that we work on. And these are huge projects when you're doing a book.
Yeah, and speaking of a book that's a teaching text, why don't you tell them about our latest project, Kate?
Our latest project is Pie Camp. The skills you need to make any pie you want. And that's our third book together, and that will be coming out in October, again, with Countryman Press, W.W. Norton. We have the same editor, Ann Treisman, the same book designer. All of this is the same. We have, you know, basically we're working with a dream team that makes it possible for these incredible teaching books. Every single one of our books are the Pie, Home Cooking with Kate McDermott, and now Pie Camp, and Andrew's That Photo Makes Me Hungry. All of these are teaching books that through the photos and through words and recipes, or in Andrew's case, not the recipes, but how to do it, makes it so that what we do, what we love to do, is accessible to those on the user end, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. I had another question come into me here about the current situation with the pandemic and the like, and what is happening with food photography after this. How do you think it's going to affect the industry?
You know, it's interesting that that question keeps coming up. And I think what we're seeing with this sort of at-home, unpretentious, very down-to-earth approach to what everyone, including food celebrities, are doing right now is going to bleed into our business. It's going to become the new norm, because I think we've all had to take a step back and sort of take a look at how we go about doing things. And I think eliminating waste and eliminating the fuss is something that we have no choice but to do right now. And I think that that's going to influence what we're doing going forward, because you think about the advertising you're being exposed to right now, right, is stuff that's actually being created in the last 6 weeks, because the stuff that's talking about coronavirus couldn't have been made before, obviously. So, and all of that is very pared down. And I think we're going to see very much the same thing. And I think this trend of home cooks, seeing chefs at home, seeing authors and photographers and other people involved in the food industry, and how they're making do with what is available, whether that be by recipe work being a little less fussy, photography being a little more mobile. All of those things, we're going to see that carry through. And even if it's not genuine, the aesthetic is going to carry through. So it's going to become somewhat of a new norm. So I think in most industries are going to be affected, but I think our industry is going to become a little bit less fussy and a little bit less precious. And I think it's going to become more utilitarian and pragmatic. And we got to be ready to react to that professionally.
Yeah, outside of the photography, though, you probably know a lot of restaurateurs and how they're handling this.
Yeah.
So many people out of work and restaurants closing. Even when they start opening up, what's it going to take to get people to go out again?
Oh yeah, I mean it's going to be really challenging. I've been consulting with our friends at Il Posto. Kate and I have eaten there many times together. They're good friends of mine, and right by my studio, and I speak to them couple times a week, and I'm going through the process with them. We're talking about it. We're just, being able to verbalize, like, what is it going to look like? Can the city loosen their cabaret laws so we can move tables out into the street or onto the sidewalk to give people more space? Like, what's it going to take for smaller restaurants to get their people to come back in? Even can we put partitions up between tables? Can we do all of these things? We're going to watch this evolve in real time. And I think those of us who are influential in the food industry, whether it be because we write books or we take pictures or we're on television, need to support our friends in the industry. And maybe as a photographer, John, you were asking questions about getting involved with local restaurateurs. They're going to need us now more than ever, and if we can help them and support them with the things that we can do, whether it be giving them exposure on social media, helping them with photography, any of the things that the charities that have been going up, like I just posted something on my Instagram yesterday or the day before with this bourbon company from Kentucky that was fronting about a $50,000 donation to hospitality workers, and then they were running a campaign with a hashtag that anybody who posted with the hashtag, they would donate they would match a $2 donation to that fund. Like things like that. And people have approached me about that, and I've been participating in what I feel is, which is things that I feel are real and could help. And then, of course, dealing with my friends. I have several very close friends who own restaurants, and dealing with how do we approach, the fact that a lot of them are going to be in financial deficits in the next 3 months. And, Julio, my business partner in the movie industry, and I have been talking about how we could retrofit our crowdfund equity model that we use to raise money to make our movies for restaurants. Which basically is like a GoFundMe, except we're not asking people for money. We're asking them for an investment, right? Where we are saying, here's your investment. You're going to make an investment in what we're doing. And if the investment is successful, you're going to get your money back plus 10%. And that I'm looking at my restaurant friends and saying, hey, we can structure the same business model for your restaurant to raise the $100,000 shortfall that you're going to have over the next 6 months or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And you're giving your core clientele a little piece of the business. You're giving them a little piece of ownership. And I think maybe that's what it might take in that, maybe people who can invest maybe on a smaller level, but a lot of us could take a small piece of ownership in something we care about. And I know that that's something that I would be willing to do. And I would think a lot of people would be.
Yeah, I saw some news articles recently about some photographers that are doing pro bono work for local companies. Send products over to them, they'll photograph them for free right now because they can't have their regular clientele in. And I was wondering, that's maybe something you can do for your local restaurant, trade them for a meal, like you're going to photograph it for them and get some publicity for them.
Absolutely. I think it's a great way to give back. It's a great way to show good faith in an industry that we all need each other in. And I would absolutely be all for that.
So, Andrew, how's the takeout culture there in New York or in other places for those of us that are part of this meeting today? I know down here it's central to us. I live in a very remote area, and there's not a lot of you can't just walk out 2 minutes down the street or even 5 minutes, to get to a restaurant. And so the takeout is really where the big push is, that has been here in Texas, and allowing restaurants to stay open. And so everyone's getting tired of cooking in their own kitchens, and they cook what's familiar, and then it's nice to go in and taste someone else's idea of a dish, whether it's Italian or whatever, to get a change of their taste buds. What's it like there in New York and other places?
Well, I think that there's still enough restaurants that are doing takeout in New York. There are several that have not been able to continue to do takeout, including some of the restaurants that I frequent regularly. So I think there's still quite a few that are hanging on and doing that, but I do think that it's still pretty limited, and it's gonna maybe get a little bit better. But I think some of the restaurants that I'm friendly with are more concerned about their staff and have basically left it up to the staff and said, hey, if you're not comfortable, it's okay. We're not gonna keep going here. And I know, if you read the article about Prune in the New York Times, Gabrielle Hamilton's article, you get a real sense of what small restaurants, especially downtown New York, are dealing with right now. Like these restaurants that operate on these very razor thin margins, even though they appear very successful, every one of them is living right on the edge of, success and failure every day. And now this is something that seriously has pushed a lot of them over the edge. So we had this conversation very regularly about what's the Lower East Side, what is the East Village, what is, what's Bellevue going to look like, what, all of these areas where restaurants are prominent in our cities, how different are they going to be? And we don't know the answer to that yet.
I like your idea about crowdfunding and targeting it directly to the food industry and not relying on the government to solve really problems that we all face. Is we all have to eat.
Yeah.
Want to eat good food.
Yeah.
So,
and that was exactly what I said. That's exactly what I said to my friends. I was like, you built this business on your own back, on your own sweat, and sitting around waiting for somebody else to help you fix it. I'm all for applying for everything you can apply for. But in the meanwhile, there has to be plan B where you save yourself. And if you could, it may be sacrificing your pride, it may be putting yourself in a financial situation you're not exactly comfortable with, but this is a new reality and we all have to adjust.
So you mentioned that you've been doing some creative lives recently. Is there a schedule for those? Are they happening at a certain time? And while you're talking about it, I'm just going to pop up on screen some of the pictures you and I have done together of you.
Cool. Yes, I'm doing Creative Live is running my work from home cafe feature for an hour every Monday. We are live at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm so distracted because there's all these weird pictures of me popping up on my screen. Yeah, we're live every Monday at 12 Pacific and or 3 Eastern. And what I do is I cook a dish that I can finish in an hour or less, usually on the stovetop, so there's something visual going on. And then I take it over to the dining table and I take some pictures and we talk about how I'm going about making this picture. So it's been a lot of fun. We've done 3 of them already. I did one on making my great-grandmother's arancini. I did one about making a risotto with broccoli, and then I did one a couple of days ago. I made polenta with sausage and onions.
Yeah, so the photos of that look great.
It's been a lot of fun, and we're working out all these kind of fun technical details where we're doing a 2-camera shoot, but I'm also using this little tripod. So I'm looking at this tripod with my phone on it, and this is A cam, right? So this would be our A camera, and it's facing me and I'm talking, and then I have it on a shelf that's right above where my workstation is in my kitchen. And I just have to flip it down like that. And then it's doing the top-down shot of me cutting and of the ingredients. Then I take this thing off and I attach it to a chest mount that's retrofitted GoPro mount that I fit this thing on. And then I tilt it down, and then as I'm cooking, you could see my hand. And then the B cam is my laptop computer propped up on a stock pot. filming me from the side. So it's like we're doing like a 4-camera shoot, but via Skype. And it's remarkable how well it works, because they can put the feed back to Seattle, where Creative Live is, and then they're doing the mix live. So you have the host comes up. If I have to switch out the camera, they go to the other camera. It's like a total professional operation that we're doing with a phone and a laptop. So it's pretty cool, and it's been a lot of fun, and you know, it's a great way for me to keep connected to the Creative Live audience that has been inordinately supportive of me and my work. And giving back to that community right now with that kind of stuff. Plus, you know, I'm able to get the files and put them on my YouTube page. So we're able to provide a lot of free content for people at this time. And hopefully, you know, when people are back on their feet and these are the kinds of things that they're still looking for, then at that point, and they're willing to pay for it, then that's great. But right now, you know, we know that it's building goodwill in the education community is, you know, it's a mantra of Creative Live. It's been something that I believe in, so we've been doing that.
Oh,
I
great.
have a question.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're putting that camera right here, Andrew,
Yeah.
do you have to be, I would assume that you have to be really mindful of how smoothly you're moving.
Yeah, I'm trying really hard, and it was hard because I was actually cooking with both hands the other day. So I was stirring the polenta with one hand, and I'm stirring the onions with the other hand, and the camera is bouncing. The camera is bouncing around. But you know what? It was fun. You know, like you could still see the other camera. If it gets to be really distracting, they just cut to the other camera, and you can see me from the side angle. But
You do tend to talk with your hands a bit.
You think? They say if you want to shut an Italian up, make him sit on his hands.
So being surrounded by all this food, especially the pies and the like, I mean, how do you have a workout routine or anything you do? Anything special, any training or anything?
Yeah, and I'm really off my game right now because I've been training in Olympic weightlifting for about 4 years, and I've competed in Olympic weightlifting. If you don't know the sport, it's basically the only weightlifting event you ever see in the Olympics. So the reason they call it Olympic weightlifting is not because I'm going to the Olympics, because clearly I am not. But it is the style in which you lift weights, and it's a very cerebral, sort of intentional practice. It's like, it feels like yoga with weights. You know, like, 'cause you have to be in a very particular mindset and very focused and mindful of your body to lift weights in this way, because you can seriously hurt yourself if you go into an Olympic weightlifting gym and it's dead silent, where you go into a different type of gym and there's people grunting and screaming and throwing things, and it's just not like that. It's not a testosterone driven sport. It's a very almost martial arts experience, because it's a really hard thing to do. It took me almost 2 years just to do complete lifts, to learn how to do. The 2 lifts are called the clean and jerk and the snatch. And they're both really super technical that you have to learn in pieces and parts. So right now I'm suffering because I haven't been able to do it for over 2 months. I'm building my own workout routines based on the things that I've learned from my trainer and coach. And it's helping. Plus I'm at the ocean and I have a cold water wetsuit and I go out into the water to get some exercise.
Wow.
So it hasn't exactly been conducive to that, but I try.
So are you at the Jersey
I would
Shore?
like to add that Andrew, our shoots, whether they are on location at my home or whether they are on location at his studio, his workouts are done and then we shoot. So that's factored into. And I would like to ask, you know, you mentioned that it's almost like a yoga practice. Which, you know, I sort of feel is a mind-body spiritual thing. How do you feel that, do you bring that into, I think that you bring that into the work that you do in your studio. Do you feel that that's true.
Yeah, and the reason that the workout comes before the work for me is that it centers me mentally and gets me very focused, and it reinforces the discipline. And I feel like everything that we do in our work is about staying true to the discipline, is that you have to be mentally and sort of willfully disciplined to do this work consistently well, because it's very easy to take your foot off the gas. And as Kate has intimated, is that I am a rather intense human when it comes to the work. And I think the weightlifting and that kind of meditative practice that I go through when I do the weightlifting helps me keep the parts of myself that have the capacity for impatience, or let that intensity bleed out into my set, helps me keep that tamped down, because I become a little bit more zen when, one, I'm physically exhausted because I've just thrown 80 kilos over my head 6 times in the last hour, and also that the focus and the disconnection from the media and my phone and any conversation and anything else. I can only think of one thing during that time, and it helps me prepare to be focused and intentional in my work.
Nice. A couple of times you've mentioned producing and directing, and you just mentioned Team Marco. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, Team Marco is a film that I produced with the writer-director Giulio Gambudo, who's one of my closest friends. We have a film company together called Borough 5 Films. I'm sorry, Borough 5 Pictures. I can't make that mistake. He gets very mad at me. The film is completed and out in the sales cycle. We are currently negotiating with several companies about distribution, and we are hoping to have the movie out on a streaming service in September. So that is our hope right now. All indications right now are that we're moving in the right direction. The movie has been in 40 film festivals worldwide. We have won an armful of awards. We have laurels galore right now. So the film has been widely accepted in the audience community. And now we just need to get it out in broad release so that people can see it. So we're working towards that. And we are confident that we have a really good product and a really good film. And we're going to get that out to you hopefully in the next couple of months. So keep your eyes open on my socials for the announcement for when Team Marco will be available to stream into your living room.
Great. You mentioned that the female lead in there is going to be on your show this afternoon. You want to mention that again?
Absolutely, yeah. Anastasia Ganaeus is our lead female in the film. She plays Marco's mom, Anna. She's a terrific actress. You might have seen her in other things, like she was on True Blood on HBO. She's done a whole host of other things in her career. She's a lovely woman. She's a tremendous cook, and she's got a great story about her dad and Greek food. And she's been doing a website called Fancy Peasant. And we're currently talking about maybe doing a book. And I've been doing some photography for her website. And I wanted to introduce her to our audience, and I embrace her into the food community. And I think you'll like her. I think she's a lot of fun.
Great. Well, we're coming up on the hour here. Does anyone else have some questions they want to bring up? You can either unmute and ask them, or you can type them into the chat, whichever works for you. So we'll let this go for a few more minutes and see what happens.
Cool. I am all yours for the next 5 minutes. I am communicating via text with one of those restaurant people that I was just talking about. So, yeah, I'm going to talk to my buddy Chef John in a few minutes. I don't know if you know Chef John from YouTube, Chef John from Food Wishes. He's a good friend of mine. We're gonna have a chat in about 15 or 20 minutes, and then right after that, I'm gonna get prepped and ready to go live with Anastasia on my Instagram feed. So if you'd like to join us there and maybe ask some questions about how she makes her pita, and maybe anything else that you might have seen on her site, or anything else, or the movie, or anything you want to ask. I mean, we're this is a thumbs up to Kate, who just text messaged me. Anybody else have a question? Happy to answer it, something like that. See, no weightlifting, can't think, Mike.
Andrew, I want to say thank
yeah,
you for your
John.
time. It provides some inspiration for me down here in Texas to take an idea and continue to run with it, and see if I can get the local restaurant, mom and pop places, some help and get them some exposure, and let's keep their kitchens busy.
Absolutely, for sure. Do the barbecue places, because barbecue is just amazing. So.
Oh yeah, well I'm a little far from Austin and Lockhart, which is kind of like.
That's barbecue heaven, yeah.
Yeah, it is barbecue heaven. Franklin's amazing, so yeah.
Yeah.
But continued health and success to you and everyone, and in the hot spots, New York as well as Washington. You all have been really hit hard with this, and we'll get through it.
Thank you. Yeah, I've had several friends who've been sick and have recovered, thankfully. I've kept my parents in lockdown, which they're not too happy about, but we're doing the best we can here. I know we've gotten hit particularly hard, but we got a lot of people, so this is what the price sometimes of being in a big city.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're opening up here in Texas, and it's still a little scary times, but we'll get through it.
I think
Lay's opened up her microphone. You going to say something to us?
I did?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh my goodness. No, I didn't mean to, but it's good to see everybody.
Hi, Lay.
Hi.
How
Sorry,
are you?
I'm in the middle of making sourdough biscuits.
You too, huh?
That's original.
Right?
Really? Sourdough, huh?
Yeah, sourdough.
Right?
Yeah,
but there will be some sourdough donuts happening soon. So that one I'm kind of excited about.
Are you able to eat the sourdough?
I have been doing little doses and it's been okay.
Likewise.
Yeah.
I did a big dose. It wasn't okay.
Oh, no, good. Kate,
Yeah,
you know better than that.
I think we should mention here that all these foodies here have food issues.
This is true. We're all gluten intolerant, wheat intolerant, from years of abuse.
Well, I want to thank Andrew for joining us today. As I said, I'm doing this twice a week on Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, inviting people to be on or doing some photo tutorials. So I hope people will join us and spread the word to your friends. And I'm going to say goodbye for now. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, John.
Be well.
Andrew.
Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it. And if you want me to
You're
come
welcome.
back, I'm happy to. So
Good. We'll do this again. Thanks all.
thanks,
Well,
everyone.
take care from Texas.
Bye.
See you soon.